So the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack was recently announced, coming late October with 9 Nintendo 64 games and 14 Sega Genesis games. And there's one main reason that I think I may be able to justify purchasing this plan, really depending on how reasonable they set the price anyway. But I want to talk about that a little more because maybe this is just wishful thinking, but just going off of what they have shown us and little bits of pieces of information that you can kind of gather from all this stuff kind of gives me this weird idea. So let's talk about it a bit. So they also did announce these controllers, the Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis controllers that they're going to be selling for $50. There is a little bit of new information with those, and we will be taking a closer look at those controllers in a moment here. But I want to talk specifically about these games and what they're going to be doing with this stuff. So the Switch Online service began about a year and a half after the Switch launched. Many people were kind of disappointed by it, even though we were given the heads up that, yeah, we were going to pay for this eventually. We were given the heads up prior to the Switch coming out. So the one thing that people were kind of like, okay, I'm fine with it, is that the service is cheaper than what the competitors offer out there for their comparable services like PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live Gold, all that good stuff. And at the start of Switch Online, we were given NES games, and we were allowed to continue playing online games online, right? Some of the other benefits that are included are cloud saves, the wonky voice chat, and they did expand things over time. Super Nintendo was added, with both NES and Super Nintendo having more games added to the library over time. Now, we also got some special online games to play, like Tetris 99, Pac-Man 99, and the sadly missed Mario 35. They need to bring it back, damn it. That's all I got to say about that one. That was the most fun I had with any of those games. I mean, the other two are pretty cool too, but Mario 35 was sick. I could have seen them adding more to that game over time, but it was just for the anniversary. Screw you guys. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see on that. Now, they did give some benefits too, for like in-game benefits for some games. I've never even bothered with that. I'm kind of surprised it's there. I'm not even sure a lot of people realize it. Like some stuff in like Animal Crossing, I'm not even 100% take a look at the benefits, but there are a few games that offer, in-game benefits, right? Now, with all this stuff that I just mentioned, some people may be able to say the $20 a year they spend is fine. Others may still want, more to justify that cost. And, with that most recent Nintendo Direct announcing Sega Genesis and Nintendo 64, a lot of people may have thought like, wow, okay, I think that's cool. Like my $20 is well worth it, right? But we have to pay extra. It's an expansion pack. We don't know how much that's going to cost for these systems and if any additional systems will be added to that service over time. But the one thing that I always forget to mention, and I think a lot of people forget to mention, even though the information is just clearly out there, is that with the online service of Super Nintendo and NES, there is online multiplayer. You can play them with friends. And that's just kind of a fact I think that gets lost in the shuffle sometimes, kind of gets glossed over. And I mean, I think that's an awesome benefit. And that may be one of the main reasons I'd be able to justify the price bump to my existing online membership, even though some people may be like, this shit should have been included with what we're already paying for. Expand upon the service, but why charge us more, right? Keep giving us more value so we continue re-subscribing to the service every year. But no, it's an expansion pack. We're going to have to pay for it. And like I said, just kind of depending on that price, will it be worth it? But there's a few things that we have to keep in mind, and it may not be what we actually hope for with what has been presented so far anyway. But there's a lot of information that you can grab from what we've seen. It seems fairly easy and low effort to just throw up some emulated games, but when you're adding that online element to it, that's kind of cool, man, and it does take a bit more effort, right? Now, out of the 9 Nintendo 64 launch titles that were announced for the expansion pack, 6 of the games do feature multiplayer. But don't get your damn hopes up, is all I gotta say. Only Mario Kart 64 was stated to be playable online. they kept it rather open in the way they worded it. Select N64 games will be played online. That doesn't mean all multiplayer games will be online. It means select games, the games they deem worthwhile or they're able to add that feature to easily, maybe. Who knows? I could be wrong, but this is the way I am kind of taking it with the way they've worded everything. Another thing that is missing here in the screenshots for Nintendo 64 is it doesn't show the rewind feature in those screenshots. So, it makes me feel like that feature is going to be missing from these games. Maybe we won't have save states in that, what is it called? The suspend menu for Nintendo 64. I mean, nowhere has it said we'll have save states for Nintendo 64. I can't find that information anywhere. But with Sega Genesis, that information was shown to have, the rewind feature. So I would imagine we would have save states for Sega Genesis. But I feel like, the online aspect is what makes these games, having, not like owning them because we don't own them, but having access to these games kind of special. And if it's not featured for every system and game that seems like it could be supported or should be supported, I find it maybe harder for some of us to justify paying for that. Sega Genesis wasn't mentioned anywhere to have the online play for the games in this service at all. I mean, hopefully I'm proven wrong, because there's just so many awesome Nintendo 64 games that I would love to see on this service, and Sega Genesis games that would be able to be played online, with other people, with friends. Definitely would be cool. Regardless of the price point for the service, the base or the expansion, I just really don't put a lot of value on retro games that they give access to. Though I do think it's cool. It's a nice little benefit. I just don't like having no kind of ownership. You know what I mean? I know it's always like, oh, you're having a license to this stuff. You really don't own it. But it's kind of like paying for Netflix. I mean, you don't own those movies or TV shows. Once you stop paying for it, you lose access. You can't watch them anymore. But a lot of stuff that is on a service like that, you can go out and buy digitally or physically and have it in your own collection that you can watch whenever the hell you want without paying for a service. Not everything on there is available that way, but it's just, one thought that I have. With this service, with Nintendo Switch and the additional features and benefits with these games, yeah, some of that stuff is available elsewhere through other means, but not all of it. Having it on the Switch, playing it on an official Nintendo console with online, gameplay for the most part, and maybe not all Nintendo 64 games, that's a nice thing. And I kind of wish, that was part of the service. You had access to that if you pay for it. But then, at the same time, if you wanted to own that stuff, you could either digitally buy each individual game for a reasonable price, or they sell it physically in a physical collection, kind of like how the Neo Geo Pocket collection was done. You could buy a few of these games individually, or you could just buy the whole package that came with more stuff type of thing. I mean, that's what I really would like to see, is them expand upon it, because once everything's said and done, you don't have these games anymore. If the Switch Online service ends, if the Switch service is just totally discontinued, it's out of its life cycle, the newest, greatest thing is out, and they just stop this online service, you lose access to these games, Once they cut it off and you can't even pay for it anymore, you're not going to have them. So to be able to, still have them in some form, I think would be good. Now, before we go, I wanted to quickly talk about the Nintendo 64 and Genesis controllers. I saw a lot of articles over the weekend kind of making a big deal about it, I guess. I didn't really read any of them. I just kept seeing them pop up on my phone. But, the Nintendo 64 controller's hiding some secret buttons and all this craziness. And I was like, what the fuck are they talking about, right? And then I see the screenshots of the controller and whatnot, and it's nothing surprising. Nothing that I'm shocked by. I didn't piss my pants in excitement seeing any of this. It was kind of a frickin' given. The Nintendo 64 on the top side of the controller has a pair button with the 4 lights, fairly standard stuff. Then you have a little tiny ZR button, and then you have your screenshot capture button and your home button. Those are kind of things that are needed on a controller that's used for the Switch, and most controllers have that kind of stuff. Now, interestingly enough, the Sega Genesis controller doesn't include all that stuff. It does have the home and capture button because you kind of need that, but it doesn't have any additional buttons that we have been able to see. And I think the reason behind that is because they just said, you know what? You're not going to use this controller for anything other than the Sega Genesis games online, or maybe the Sega Genesis pack collection that's already sold. Like, I mean, that's why I'm kind of like, well, the Genesis pack being offered through this expansion pack, it's kind of a strange thing because we already have access to like most of that stuff through the official cartridge and whatnot. Not everything there, obviously, but a lot of it we do. It's already out there. The Sega Genesis Mini has a lot of those games, and if these games don't include online play for the Sega Genesis, then I'm kind of conflicted on where I could justify any additional value by paying more. I'm not going to pay for this service to have access to Genesis games that I could play elsewhere. I will pay for the service to have access to Nintendo 64 games that I could play online. But like I said earlier, who knows? It only seems like one out of this initial batch will be online. Hopefully I'm freaking wrong. But back to that Genesis controller, it just seems like, just the 3 buttons. You're not going to want to use this for anything else. So why would we put any additional buttons in wonky positions around the perimeter of the controller? It just doesn't make any damn sense, right? So, I mean, that's where it's at. I'm kind of excited for this service in the sense that I want to see how they approach it with the online aspect of it. I want to get those Nintendo 64 controllers in my hands and just play. I know we have other options for Nintendo 64 type controllers for the Switch. There's stuff from Retrobit and whatnot, but regardless of the trident shape, I love the Nintendo 64 controller, and I'm one of the few people who've said, like, I really like the original controller. It was just the controller's fault with that stick, the way it just kind of loosened over time, limp stick syndrome type of thing. That was the only thing that really bothered me. I think the controller was innovative for its time. Yeah, I mean, to be able to play 3D type games over the years, controllers have evolved from this design, but I'm fine with it. I like it, and I'm excited to get a new official Nintendo 64 controller in my hands, hoping that they did kind of fix the bowl and all that for that stick. I hope they did something different with it so it lasts longer, because it's just going to suck if we have to replace parts, or if it is even replaceable. If it uses the same stuff, then fine, we could replace parts from existing Nintendo 64 replacement parts, right? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see how they went about that. But that was one of my biggest fears, was why would they re-release this controller with the same stick, with that grinding bowl, the dust coming out of it? I mean, have to wait and see. Just excited to get this in my hands and test it out. Let me know what you guys think down below. Really do appreciate every single one of you mofos. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.